I was born in 1956 in Shreveport, Louisiana. My father was praying that his firstborn would be a son. And sure enough, his firstborn was me, Louis Nicholas Mandrapilias. And he was so proud. He said he picked up the doctor in the delivery room and just shook him, like, I can't believe you gave me a son. You gave me a son. Little did he know that his one and only son was going to turn out to be this little gay boy who was not going to carry on the family name. He would buy me machine guns and hunting knives, but I wanted the artistic stuff, the pretty stuff. In the 50s and the 60s, there was still segregation. There were separate entrances, at the movie theaters and water fountains and all of that. So I knew there was discrimination on this level against, a group of people. And I internalized that as well, that, oh, I'm different too. Theirs is on the outside, but mine's on the inside. I had to keep this secret. And I just remember the first time I picked up a drink when I was 13 at my cousin's wedding. I grabbed a glass of champagne, I downed it, and I took another glass and I downed that, and I took another glass and downed that. I believe that I was born an alcoholic, and the minute I put that alcohol into my system, I just immediately wanted more because it made me feel good. It made me feel like, oh, okay, I don't have to hide my secrets. I'm not a bad person. Or if I am a bad person, it doesn't matter because I'm drunk and I don't care anymore. Sonny and Cher had just come on TV. I saw Cher with these beautiful sequin gowns, that Bob Mackie had designed. And I went and constructed one of these dresses on cardboard. My dad just stood above me looking down at me like, what is my son doing? He was an old guerrilla fighter from the mountains of Greece. He was macho. When they talk about these soprano type guys, that was my father. He didn't know what to do with me. And, being raised in this Greek family, I was an altar boy. Every Sunday morning, I have to put on my gold robe and go stand at the altar and hold my candle, In the background, I'm hearing all these messages about sex is evil, but gay sex is really evil. Basically, everything about me was wrong. And so this is back in the day when there was the Sears catalog, which had everything. You could buy a house, you could buy, a toolkit. You could also buy men's underwear. And they had pictures of these men modeling their underwear. And man, I got a lot of mileage out of the Sears catalog. It was great. It was so good. The bathroom floor downstairs was like my little getaway. It was my man cave. And I would turn on the fan, I would turn on the shower, it's not like I was making any noise, but just to disguise whatever was going on there. I have a moment of escape. And just knowing that's what I wanted. One day I was going to be able to connect with a man. And I'd been out on dates with girls, kissing and feeling some breasts, but I couldn't fake it. It was kind of like, this is pointless. I'm not interested in that. I was working at this department store, and in walked this man with his white button-down shirt open to almost mid-navel, his beautiful golden hairy chest just pouring out of it. I didn't know who this man was. And I went up to him and I started selling him some cologne and talking to him and telling him he had some paint dabs on his shirt. How did you get that shirt? Where'd you get that shirt? I'd love to get one like that. I was so bold. Oh my God, I can't believe how strong I came onto him. He invited me over to his apartment later that night. And within 5 minutes, he offered me a drink. And I was in bed with him and oh my God, the heavens opened up. It was spectacular. This is all I've ever wanted, to feel this contact with a man. But it did open the floodgates. It was just like, yes, this is my mission in life. I am gay. At that point, this was 1973, and the American Psychiatric Association had just declared that homosexuality was no longer considered a mental illness. And so in my mind, it's like, see, I can do this. I can be a gay man. So at the same time, I am delving into drugs. I am smoking a lot of marijuana. And I am rebellious. And I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I am so ready to get out of there. Once I left high school, I went to Greece for the summer, and I went to a place called Mykonos, which is a very famous island now, but in 1974, it was a tucked away gay destination. You know, man, you talk about a coming out party. I had so much fun. It was like men, men, men. I can't even go into it because it was mind blowing. And after that, there really was no turning back. Like, I know there's a whole world waiting for me of gay adventure. So after returning from Mykonos, I go to the University of Houston and I take painting and sculpting and graphic design. And I remember my father telling me, "What are you going to do? Sit on a street corner and paint pictures of people? How are you going to make money like that?" I excel at it. I'm having fun in school. I'm being creative. And then I'm going to the bars at night and getting drunk and getting laid. And in Houston, I could just wear my cutoffs and my tank tops and just be the biggest flirt. And it was wonderful. It was magical. It was such a great time. Even though we were out there being decadent, there was still such an innocence about all of us. You know, we were all these gay men finally able to just come out and embrace ourselves. And we didn't have to apologize for what we wanted to do with our lives. So at this point, I'm 21 and I have started dealing some grass and marijuana. And I thought, I owe it to myself to go explore New York. And a friend of a friend gave me a phone number and said, when you go, call this guy up. Maybe he'll take you, to a museum or a bar or something. I call him and we meet in Central Park. And he's the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. He offered me 2 hits of MDA, a hallucinogen. Within 15 minutes, we're rolling around in the grass in the middle of Sheep's Meadow in Central Park in broad daylight. We race back to his apartment, have the most incredible... I thought I knew what incredible sex was. And we talked about all my secrets as a kid, growing up and being ashamed of being gay. And I just opened up to him like I had never opened up to anybody. A few minutes later, he says, "Do you want to go to Studio 54? I'm hungry for all of this. I cannot believe my good fortune. Like, I'm with this beautiful man who's not ashamed to be seen with me out in public. And in fact, after we dance on the dance floor, he takes me up to the balcony, the infamous balcony, and rips all my clothes off. And we're having sex with all these other people having sex in the balcony." And, for the next 2 weeks, he introduced me to everything, including a needle, including heroin and cocaine. I would have done anything, and I did do anything that he asked me to do. I was so in love with him. I was so in love with New York. I was just this whole fantasy. And then he said, "I have some friends who will pay you $10,000 to pick up a hash-lined suitcase in India and bring it back to New York. And then you could move here." I'd been selling pot, in Houston. And my dad broke the law a few times, more than a few times that I know of. Okay, this sounds a little dangerous, but I could move to New York. And I could be with this man. I thought I was sophisticated. I thought I knew what was going on. And I was just a babe. And wolves were just there devouring me. But I was along for the ride. I said yes.
Was that his motive?
Life lessons come in all different forms and packages. Here's the thing. He already had a boyfriend who was in India while I was spending time with him in New York. And we all got to meet together. And it was not a good first meeting. But eventually we worked it out. And we became a throuple, as they call it nowadays. There's a lot here to unpack. I went to India. The plan fell through. I ended up going to an ashram and staying there for a month and studying with a guru named Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who was very big back in the 70s and 80s. There's a Netflix special about him, Wild, Wild Country. I also meet the most beautiful woman. Finally, I sleep with a woman at an ashram in India. I had to go to India to pop my cherry, with a woman. This is 1978, and I end up scoring 7 ounces of heroin, pure heroin, that was just enough to fit into a small condom. I snuck it on the plane. I had it inside of me. I did, in fact, get pulled over at customs. They did strip me down to my underwear, and they didn't try to stick a finger up my butt. They didn't ask me to remove my underwear. And I walked out of there with my heroin that was worth $100,000, not the $10,000 that I thought I was going to make when I initially went. And things just got crazy after then. I became a full-blown heroin addict. I just thought, man, what have I done? What have I gotten myself into? And my girlfriend from India shows up on the doorstep in New York, and she says, I've got a friend in Bolivia who's got great cocaine, and you can start your own business. You can go do your own thing. I had 1 year left to graduate, and I dropped out to go become a drug smuggler. So I go to Bolivia, I get this cocaine, I come back, but unlike the first time, I get loaded on the plane. I am so high, and I'm skin and bones. When I get off the plane in Miami, DEA is like, you're coming with us. And they find the coke, they just ship me right off to prison. My father, this man that I just butted heads with, put his house up as collateral for my $100,000 bail to get me out of prison and get the case transferred to Louisiana. It was all perfectly legal, but I mean, he really had to pull strings to get it done. I'm thinking, what if I had lived my life differently? What if I hadn't been drunk or getting high or, going after men? I questioned all of that. I did. But in that moment, the main thing was that my life is over. I'm 22 and my life is over. Eventually I get out, I get this 5-year probation, I have to get a real job. I moved back to New York. As long as I had my probation officer, in touch with their offices and going and peeing in a cup twice a week to check me for drug use. They're not checking me for alcohol, they're checking me for drug use. So I start drinking a lot. But eventually I have moved back in with Govind, and I have to be careful not to get high with him. One of his friends who got us into Studio 54 all the time, he's a master carpenter. And I went to work in Midtown at this great loft, and man, I loved it. It was the hardest work I've ever done. And I can build a house from the ground up, and have done it many times. But eventually, I leave New York one last time. This is 1981, and most importantly, there's just been the newspaper article, the New York Times, gay cancer found in 41 men. Right after that I went back to Houston and re-enrolled in school and made straight A's and still had to go to the probation officer and pee in a cup and graduated, got my degree, in graphic design. But right after that, the probation officer called and said, you've been such a model parolee that we're letting you off for good behavior. So no more peeing in a cup. I went out and I got cocaine, I got marijuana, and had a party. And my friend Govind called me from his new home in Florida. He had left New York and said, we've got a foolproof plan to pick up heroin in Bangkok. Now, a normal person would say, I've already been to prison once. If I'm ever caught again, I'm not getting another 5 years probation. But my best friend Tommy died from AIDS. And Govind's boyfriend was sick. And by the time I got there, he was dead from AIDS. And I knew we were next. So it didn't really matter. And we went to Bangkok, and it was foolproof. And I had all this heroin and all this money and a new convertible, and I'm back with this beautiful man. And so it was just this existence, just hanging on together. And we told each other, when the time comes when we get sick, we'll just load up a needle and overdose. We're not going to get sick. We're not going to go to the hospital. We're not going to linger. And I was just dead inside. I was so dead. But I heard this voice say, you don't have to live like this. And I got on a plane and flew home to my hometown, Shreveport, Louisiana, the place that I wanted to escape from. And on January 1st of 1984, after kicking heroin for a week on my own, I checked into a rehab center in Shreveport. And in the back of my mind still, but you're probably HIV positive and you're probably going to die in the next year. But let's just say stay sober today. Let's just keep going to AA meetings and working these steps and fellowship and finding friends and having fun without picking up a drink or a joint, which I did. I had so much fun. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that you could laugh or go dancing or have sex without getting high. Then in 1985, after I bought my new house that I was remodeling and started my own business, I did test positive. There were no support groups. It was a death sentence. And every time I had a cold or a sore throat, I thought, okay, this is it. It's coming on. At that point, when I'm 29 years old and a year sober, I have started my own advertising agency. I met Louis Camback, and so we started our ad agency called Louie Louis. Oh man, I remember my probation officer because he'd seen the story in the newspaper and he came by. Oh, and I'm sorry, Mr. Goldman, for going to Bangkok. He came by to congratulate me on turning my life around. So I got sober January 1st of 1984, and that is my sobriety date. I haven't had a drink or taken drugs, since then. I wanted to let go of that old way of life. I didn't know it in the beginning that would be my life, because it was like, okay, I'll give this 3 months. I'll give it 6 months. And before I knew it, I had a year. And then I had 5 years. And like I said, the police weren't chasing me anymore. And, I didn't wake up with hangovers. And I stayed in Shreveport, part of me, because I was afraid to go back out into the big world, whether it was Houston or New York or whatever. And this is 1989, and I've got less than 200 T cells, which is a marker for, developing AIDS. And my doctor had already told me, well, get your affairs in order because you'll be dead within a year. Now, he had told me that 3 years before. And so I've already beat his diagnosis. So I come out to Los Angeles to visit Robert. Oh my God. If anybody wants to get sober and have a good time, come out to Los Angeles. Was involved in drag shows and fundraisers, but every week, 2 to 3 to 4 funerals. This person has gone blind. This person's got spots on his legs. Going to the gym and seeing these beautiful men overnight just lose 20 pounds. And even Robert, who had taken me in, who invited me out here, I ended up taking care of him. He developed full-blown AIDS. It was just in my face. You could not escape it. AZT has just come out, and some people are having really bad reactions to it. Some people are telling you it's poison, don't take it. And all I could do was plan for my future. Like I said, I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. Some friends told me, oh, they're looking for an art director at The Advocate. It was a very entry level, and I didn't care. They had health insurance. This was still pre-computers. We were still doing, wax on the back of the typesetting and, laying, sketching in the photos where they would go. In 1996, when the cocktail came out, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to have to get old now? I'm going to have to face, silver hair, all of that stuff. But anyway, Mom and Dad came out to visit me many times over the years and stayed with me in Los Angeles and met my friends. Dad would say things at a Greek wedding like, so-and-so said she's got somebody for you. And under his breath, he'd say, but I should have told her she wasted her time. Which was great that he could joke even a little about it. But I know how he felt. That's just who he was. Over the years, I've had so many different jobs. I went back to The Advocate after being on disability because I wasn't going to die. And I became art director for HIV Plus magazine. This thing that was supposed to kill me, that degree that I got in Houston, is what I used to put this magazine together. And I left there briefly because I wanted to go take care of my parents. And so for a little over a year, I was back there in Shreveport, tending to them, working for my sister, got them through that period of their lives, and then realized if I stay in Shreveport, I'm going to kill myself. I cannot live here. I'm a big, loud gay man from Los Angeles, and I need that world again. I found a job as a designer for a fragrance company. It involved 3D thinking. I had to picture how a box would fold up, just like you would picture a cabinet being made. How did little old Louie from Shreveport get this job? How did I do this? And then in this acting class, I wrote this conversation of my father telling me as a little boy why he couldn't be there while I was growing up. I ended up writing about my drug smuggling days and turned it into a book. I think about all the times that there may have been an opening for us to have some healing, and I'm talking years ago, and I would immediately just fight back. And in my writing, like I said, I was able to come to terms and really acknowledge what a great dad he was to me. You know, he did come and get me out of prison. He did pay for my college education. I really owned up to a lot of stuff. I think about when I was sitting there sobbing in my prison cell. I think about leaving the doctor's office that day with the HIV diagnosis. I remember at 10 years of sobriety owing the IRS tens of thousands of dollars. How am I ever going to get out of this? And I've gotten through all of those things. You know, as dark as it can be, sometimes really awful things have to happen for us to get to the other side. I feel so fortunate that I got to live in the time that I did. During all the years I've been in Los Angeles, there were a handful of men that I was really interested in, that I had 6 months to a year relationships with. I love other people's company, but I don't mind being on my own. I can't imagine not having these friendships in my life, this support group, these people that have known you for years and know your history that you can use shorthand with. I've got a warm bed and coffee, my old car, you know, just life. I'm just so grateful for the simplest of things, and that I can get up then out of my bed and go ride my bike to the gym. Do you know how lucky I am? I know how lucky I am. You know, when I was given that diagnosis in 1985, and my doctor said, well, you've probably got 6 months to a year to live. Who knew? Who knew that I was going to end up having this amazing life in Los Angeles, you know, still building. I just remodeled a brownstone in Brooklyn a couple of years ago for my sister. That really bad incident of getting busted with the cocaine in Miami, which led to my arrest, and probation, where I learned how to build in a shop in Midtown. Like, who could have predicted that? I so didn't want to die for my dad. You know, it still comes back to that shame. I didn't want my father to have a gay son who died from AIDS. And if it was my truth, that's what it was. But the fact that I got to be here for him and my mom in their old age and help to make them be as comfortable as they could be, because it's not fun at the end. You know, it never is, no matter what you do. But who knew? Who knew that that was going to happen? I'm just so grateful for my journey that's still unfolding, and I'm grateful that I got to share this with you.
Dad prayed for a warrior to carry on his name, but my stars were colors not meant for the same. Shame was a shadow that followed me around. I flew too high till I burned to the ground. Dad prayed for a warrior. Dad prayed for a warrior follow me around. I looked for lust and love till I lost solid ground. Dad prayed for a woman to carry on his name, but my swords were colors not meant for the same. Shame was the shadow that followed me around. I flew too high till I burned to the ground. Counting every day. Then I heard a voice say, this isn't the end. I came back from the edge to face what was left. I reclaimed my life from the hands of death. My days were numbered, counting every breath. Then I heard a voice say, this isn't the end. I came back from the edge to face what was left. I reclaimed my life from the hands of death.